Good evening. I wrote a book about the history of Pico. I hope I've got it right side up for you. And tonight, I'd like to share with you a little bit of that history and also reflect a little bit on Pico's legacy. Pico was founded 75 years ago on Thanksgiving Day, 1937, which is really just about the same time that downhill skiing in this country started. You know, people have been skiing, cross-country skiing for centuries, using skis as a form of transportation over long distances. That's been going on for hundreds of years. But downhill skiing, that branch of the sport, didn't really develop until we had some uphill transportation. Downhill skiers, as we all know, don't like to walk uphill. And uphill transportation, that actually started in 1934. Over in Woodstock, Vermont, the first rope tow was installed near Suicide 6. Pico opened 3 years later, 1937, with another rope tow. So right at the very beginning of downhill skiing. Pico was founded by a young couple named Brad and Janet Mead. Very interesting couple, young people, moved up here from the city. Brad was an artist, an architect. They just loved this new sport of downhill skiing. And they thought the best thing in the world, and I have this fantasy myself sometimes, would be to open a ski area and invite all of your friends over to ski. And this is essentially what happened at Pico. They opened on Thanksgiving Day, 1937, took off, great crowds, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of local people, even out-of-staters. This was the time of the snow trains. So trains from the city, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, would bring skiers up to Rutland. They would journey up to Pico and spend the weekend skiing and then travel back home again. So great crowds, really took off. Brad and Janet traveled to Europe every winter to research the ski areas over there and bring back information and material for Pico. And they brought back the Constam T-Bar, which was the first alpine T-Bar lift in North America. They set it up over on Little Pico, which is the smaller elevation over to the left of the main mountain where A and B slope are. And this was the highest capacity lift in the world at that time. This is 1940. Pico was also home to the first volunteer ski patrol in the country, 1938. You know, ski equipment back then was very primitive by today's standards. They used these great big, long, way up over your head, long, straight wooden skis, and fastened them onto their boots, which were these soft leather lace-up boots, with something they called bear trap bindings. And that's exactly what they did. They trapped you on these skis. There was no automatic release system. So, as you can imagine, people started getting hurt. And so some local people stepped up, formed the Otter Ski Patrol in 1938. It's always been a volunteer ski patrol. Most ski patrols are paid patrols. Pico, always been volunteer ski patrol, and the first one in the country. Pico is also home to a very famous and successful junior racing program. Many of this country's best ski racers learn to ski and race at Pico. And the star of that program was the Mead's own daughter, Andrea Mead. She married, became known as Andrea Mead Lawrence. And in 1952, Andrea won 2 Olympic gold medals and remains today the only U.S. skier ever to win 2 gold medals in one Olympics. Andrea died in 2009. So many other Olympians. The Chaffees, Rick and Susie Chaffee from Rutland, Harry Ryan, Rebel Ryan, Mike Gallagher, before he was an Olympic cross-country skier, was a very good alpine ski racer. So many, many ski racers learned to ski at Pico. College racers, national champions. That racing tradition continues today, as the Bows can tell us. Alyssa used to ski and race there. So Pico has a very rich, I'm going to try to use the word of the day, if I can pronounce it, irrefutably rich history. And in light of Pico's 75th anniversary, I think it's a good occasion to reflect on its legacy, which I really think is threefold. First, survival. 75 years of continuous operation. Pretty remarkable. Pico is one of fewer than 30 ski areas anywhere in North America that has operated continuously for 75 years. Some ski areas that are as old as Pico had to close for a short time during the war in the 40s, or had to close in the 80s and 90s when ski areas were facing so many economic challenges. Pico did. I mean, it had to file for bankruptcy in 1996, still managed to open and operate. 75 years, continuous operation. Pretty remarkable achievement. Second, I think, is the impact that Pico has had on the Rutland community and economy. I think I'm a case in point. 3 generations of my family have skied at Pico. My dad, he's 87 years old. He started skiing at Pico in the 30s. Because of his exposure to the sport, he made that sport available to us kids when we were growing up. My daughter skis at Pico, learned to ski there. So 3 generations of my family. I think I'm like a lot of Rutland people. 3, 4 generations of skiers at Pico. It's been a place of employment. I worked at Pico. I would come home from college at Christmas time. It was a busy time at the ski resorts. I was able to get a job at Pico and work in the cafeteria or parking cars or lift attendant. So it's been a place of employment. It has introduced so many Rutland people, Rutland families, to skiing, to winter sports, to the winter outdoors. It's been a place of employment. All of the young ski racers who learned to ski there went on to excel at the college level, the national and Olympic level. So I think it's had an enormous impact on this area. And third, I really think Pico, this one mountain, this one ski resort, reflects the whole history of the development of alpine skiing in this country. It started at the very beginning, the 1930s, took off, great enthusiasm, great crowd skiing. Pico took off. The war came along, almost crushed the ski industry. The 50s, the 60s, great expansion. Pico was kind of left out of this period, but it caught up again in the 60s, 70s, 80s. We had great expansion, huge advances in technology. You know, we talked about rope tows in the 1930s. By 1980s, Pico and other ski resorts were putting in high-speed, detachable quad chairlifts. You know, huge advances in technology, grooming technology, snowmaking, advances in equipment. All of this happened at Pico. We had the rise of the environmental movement, which greatly impacted ski areas and their plans for growth and expansion. This happened at Pico. It had plans to expand over onto the eastern side of the mountain. that was challenged by the environmentalists. With the 80s, the 90s, all of the economic challenges facing ski areas, many of them, having financial difficulty filing for bankruptcy. This happened at Pico. Had to file for bankruptcy in 1996. Mergers, acquisitions, all of that. This happened at Pico. It merged with Killington, the American Skiing Company, and then Powder Ski Corporation. So this whole history of alpine skiing in this country, I think, is reflected in this one mountain. And Pico not only reflects this history, but I think it has impacted and influenced this history. We had the highest capacity lift in the world in 1940. So Pico was out in front of lift technology there for a short time. The first ski patrol in the country. The greatest U.S. ski racer ever coming out of Pico. All of the other racers coming out of Pico. So I think Pico has not only reflects this whole history of alpine skiing, but has actually impacted and influenced this history. And I think that's a good cause to celebrate on this 75th anniversary.